Welcome to our latest ITS UK coronavirus webinar, where we look at the impact of the crisis on the ITS industry and how our industry can help with solutions. Just a reminder before I start to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you'll not only see these discussion programs, but a range of events from our extensive number of forums. Now, the transport industry is, without a doubt, facing huge change from the unprecedented pleas by government for people to use their cars rather than take public transport, which is turning policy of decades completely on its head, to the impact of walking and cycling. But as the 2-meter social distancing rule could have been reduced by the time you actually watch this to question marks about how much home working will change the morning and afternoon peaks, we know transport technology can be a far quicker and more flexible solution than just pouring more concrete or buying or adapting more public transport vehicles. But we know it because we work in the industry. But how do we get the wider transport industry to know about it? And how do we make policymakers take note? So I've got together some marketing experts for this week's discussion. So let me introduce Krishna Desai, the Global Marketing Manager at Cubic Transportation Systems, Georgia Tompkins, who's in the marketing team at one of our smaller members, Appiway, and Alex Kreitzer, who is editor at Auto Futures, a service from DMA Media, who have a partnership with us at ITS UK. And we'll find out a bit more about that in a moment or two. And it's very good to see that we have a gender-balanced panel today, given it's being released on International Women in Engineering Day. So let's start with Krishna. Krishna, you work for a huge multinational and you oversee the marketing for everything that Cubic Transportation Systems does all around the world. If you don't oversee it, you're definitely involved in it. How do you push Cubic's extensive technological solutions range to people that don't necessarily know about technology and don't quite know the amazing things that our industry can do?
Thanks, Paul. I think it's twofold. I think as our job as a big supplier, but as an industry as a whole, we need to do a better job at informing the influential publications about what's happening in the industry, because usually they're the ones that are spreading the news and the information to the wider public, the general public, but also the transport policymakers and government bodies that would be reading these kinds of publications, because that's how they normally get their information. And I think since COVID has happened, a lot more people are getting their information through a digital means. So social media is becoming a lot more informative in terms of how the digital information is translated, whether it's LinkedIn, and people are reading shorter, snappier informations and on the news feeds and on Twitter. And I think information is changing how it's being presented, from it being quite lengthy, academic-based information to short, snappy as we go with the times. So one of the things that we do is work quite a lot with PR agencies to really get them to understand the technology that's happening, not just with Cubic, but with our partners in the industry as a whole, and let them be the change makers and the noise makers to then disrupt how we're talking about what we're doing, because sometimes it's easy for us to talk about our own solutions in the jargon heavy words that we use and just, expecting everybody to know about it, or sometimes not even seeing the unique selling points of what it is that we're actually trying to say. And when you put it across somebody completely new to the industry, it's like, oh, well, this is really cool. Or actually, why would people find that really interesting? Like, why would somebody want to have virtual VMS signs in their cars to give them information about what's going to happen on the roads? Won't that be a distraction? Versus us being like, why would we want to spend all that money on digital infrastructure when it could, the information could be flowing inside people's cars? So it's actually nice to get an outdoor perspective. And I think having these communications experts deliver the news on our behalf, understand what the key messaging is, and really be able to hit the message on the head and tell public authorities and the day-to-day people about what's happening is actually a great way of getting the information out, as opposed to us drumming our own trumpets and just basically, patting ourselves on the back, and nobody listens. You become noise and wallpaper to people.
I think that's interesting you're saying that, because an awful lot of businesses do think that they can manage their own social media, manage their own website and releases on there, put things on LinkedIn, and that's enough. But there is that sort of sense when you read things from businesses, well, they would say that, wouldn't they? So what you're basically saying is getting that third party is important. And also, I guess, it gets more visibility that the news is out there, but just putting it out there doesn't necessarily mean people see it. But you're looking for these organizations to be trusted guides to guide people who are interested in the solutions that you're talking about to actually find out about those solutions.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like, just to add to that point, another example is, for example, Cubic has won a contract in Merida in Mexico, and it's using our NextBus technology, which provides real-time information on buses, with our trafficware component, which is providing traffic lights and signaling on the roads. And what's going to actually happen is the buses will be talking to the trafficware infrastructure, and there'll be signal priority for buses based on their schedule. So if they're running late, they'll actually prioritize green lights so the buses can stay ahead and stay on schedule. Because what you don't want is bunching happening at stops now and people getting off all at the same time, or buses, just not actually sticking to their schedules. You want people to trust that the buses are going to come on time and they're going to get to their end destinations on time. And it's also trusting the information. And it's all fair and well us knowing about it and the agencies knowing about it. But if people don't know, then they're not going to be like excited about it. So, we don't do a good enough job ourselves at promoting the technology that we're piloting and we're pioneering, and doing something as simple as even putting a poster on, like, inside the buses, or a lot of buses now have digital displays, and actually saying, hey, did you know we're actually talking to the traffic lights, and our bus will be prioritized, so you'll never be late, or so you'll get to your end destination in time. People that are sitting on the buses would be like, oh, that's quite cool. Like, I didn't know that was happening in the background. And so if we're not doing enough ourselves telling other people about the technology that they're actually, experiencing there and then we're not doing ourselves justice either. And we need them to be the advocates and almost like the voice to tell their friends and then tell their family. Because one thing that we do a lot is, I find it really interesting. My brother actually was telling me, oh, they're building smart motorways. And I was like, oh, great. You know what a smart motorway is? And he was like, yeah, they're going to build an extra lane so that electric vehicles can charge themselves. And I'm like, that's not what it is. They're just building more digital signs. And he was like, oh, is that it? And it was interesting because he knew what it was because there was advertisement saying smart motorway being built here, but it didn't actually say what it was. So people don't actually know what it is, they just assume and they think of this most craziest thing, and it's not that. So it's not just important to tell people what you're doing, but why and what does it do and what are the benefits that it's bringing you in a really easy to digest manner.
You've actually jumped ahead for me there, Krishna,
Sorry.
because no, don't worry about it. It's really interesting to pick up on the two audiences that our industry needs to reach beyond telling each other, is the policymakers and the decision makers and those with budget, and then the wider traveling public. Because I've always believed that if the wider traveling public doesn't know of the amazing things that technology can help them with, and even more actually recognize some of this technology, because a lot of things people will take in their stride. They now use sat navs and don't really think about it. They check the train times on their phones, and they know when their train's delayed. All this stuff has been stuff delivered by the ITS industry, but they don't necessarily realize that it's anything other than it's just kind of happened. And isn't it handy? I want to bring Georgia in, actually, Georgia, because of course one of the issues that we've got now is, as I said in the introduction, the government turning on its head transport policy so that we have people being encouraged to drive in a time when for years the last thing they wanted you to do was actually drive your own car. They wanted to get you out of your car. That's put a lot more pressure on authorities when it comes to managing parking. So I guess that if you're a company with a fantastic and innovative parking solution, how are you going to get that message across now when you don't want councils and other authorities to go off and do something else, and you're thinking, hello, we've got a solution that can help you. How are you actually going about reaching the your target market in order to try and build your business?
Yeah, so we're doing a couple of things. The biggest thing that we've been doing is, without an external PR agency, myself and my team are the PR agency, we're leaning quite heavily on our contacts within the industry. So people like yourself, Paul, and lots of our other friends at lots of other publications, and we're doing a lot of work with them, whether it's co-authoring articles within trade magazines, or whether it's just making sure that we're keeping our news front and center and keeping those relationships strong with those publications. The other thing that we're doing, because government guidance and funding is changing all the time. So as a team and as a company, we've just made sure that we've been on top of all of that, making sure that we know what the government guidance is, and creating booklets and creating white papers and just thought leadership pieces, so that our local authority partners and people we haven't partnered with yet know that we're on top of this, we know what this means, and we have the solutions to help them with that. I think historically we've been known just for parking. They think we're just an app, we're just there to put in smart parking solutions, when actually for local authorities, we have the software that they need to make these rapid changes to their curbside. That would be through traffic orders, if everyone knows what traffic orders are. So we've got the software that they need to make those changes quickly and change their curbsides in line with the new statutory guidance. So we're just shouting about that as much as we can through our trade partners and through white papers and guides.
And how much is your focus on business to authority, and how much is it going to business to consumer?
So at the moment, our focus is definitely very much business to government, so to the local authorities. We still have our partner stuff going, we still have our consumer stuff going. Obviously, a lot of people weren't parking. Everyone was in lockdown. They weren't going to shops, so therefore they weren't using our smart parking solution. But that's all started up again with the shops reopening. So a lot of our interactions with our consumers have started ramping up again. But our focus is definitely very much on government at the moment.
Alex, your Auto Futures is part of DMA Media's overall offering that kind of links organizations and companies with journalists and news channels around the world. The ITS industry isn't necessarily particularly good at shouting about some of the amazing solutions that we've come up with. What have we been doing wrong?
That's the hard question. That's the money maker. I think realistically, what we've seen over the last decade, certainly in ITS sector, is that the evolution of technology in the modern world has allowed us to utilize new sets of data and technology to, I don't use the word lightly, revolutionize the way that we see transport. And that's both from industry perspective and a consumer perspective. So from certainly with my background working in this space alongside you guys, I know what's going on. Obviously, I know working with Appiway in the past, I know what you guys are doing. I know you're working with the authorities. I know all the R&D that goes into it. And it's probably unfair to say that these companies, it's almost the easy part is making the software, making the solution. Obviously, it's not, but where the roadblock is getting the message out there. And from people that we've dealt with in the past, what we go to them, we say, what is the solution on a personal or a humanizing level? So how does this solution solve the problem? Obviously, this differs for different areas in the market and different solutions. But if people can understand the human aspect of it, what does it do for society? They start to understand and unravel, and then overall, they get interested in this product, solution, or company. And then with that, like we've seen with, not to mention the global pandemic, but we've seen a change in behavior on a society level. Again, not to go into it too much, but we're seeing people riding bikes more, not using public transport. Now, this has had a domino effect or snowball effect that we're starting to see the government reacting to what society is talking about. It is maybe not a buzzword, but it's the talk of the town at the moment. How can we do this better, whatever that may be, right? And I think that translates into many of these systems that we talk about. I know that there's incredible technology across the field all over the world, certainly in the UK if we speak about this, but we can't get that message to society outside of the interest. So where we need to bridge the gap between industry focus and consumer level, which is very difficult. And I know that we mentioned before the power of sort of social media, and there's algorithms that you have to go around that. That's almost a whole nother discussion. It's delivering the message as well. And I think that by targeting distribution, tailoring the content per deliverable, and sort of realizing what the solution is or the product is. And I think once you get down to the basics, you then build the infrastructure of the news or product from there.
It's interesting what you said at the very beginning of the answer there, Alex, which reminds me of something I was taught at journalism college far too many years ago that I want to even admit, that actually news is about human beings. So, you know, we would get slapped if we started a story with "the council is" or "police are ... because it was about what's happened to a human or the impact to humans, etc., etc. And I think it's very important that when we're trying to explain the benefits, it's about what it means for the traveling public, what changes, what improvements there can be, rather than just this is an amazing gizmo and it works because it uses blah, 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 and blah. Because actually you can lose people really easily if you start to overcomplicate things.
I totally agree with you. And actually it works the other way, and it's very unfair because obviously I know that within ITS, we have loads of companies and loads of really interesting people with innovative solutions. The problem is, unfortunately, the market is so sort of engulfed in so much news, so many products and stuff that might not necessarily be as good as what some of our ITS members have. So I've seen many, like for example, throwing the unicorn name around, we are the best, we've generated this much investment. Do they actually have a product that can change anything? In some cases, if not most, no, they do not. And obviously everybody involved in this conversation now, I know firsthand, has a solution that will aid society and aid transport moving forward. But it's about getting to our level of increasing the basis of the technology we have, the knowingness that we have, the intellectual capabilities that we have, and pushing it up into the market to compete with some of these people. Because unfortunately, as the last couple of years with the rise of social media and stuff, it has really been about who shouts the loudest. But I'm starting to see, certainly dealing with many different areas in the industry and sometimes outside of the industry, people are cottoning on to the realization that don't just believe everything that you hear. And I think that now we're seeing this shift. You start to see, again, people in this conversation now, people start to actually realize that these are the real people doing the real solutions that they can back up. So I think the tide has turned. Obviously, there is still some way to go. It's just more about maybe the simple things, just continue to communicate, continue to collaborate, continue to be transparent, and hopefully, and I truly believe, we will get to the point where people will realize, sort of cut through the noise and see who are the real players in the market.
I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the news about certain startups that are this unicorn brand that you know, have these solutions that actually in the real world they don't make money. They don't make money for their partners, and they're not making money for themselves. And I think going back to Alex's point, that's where collaboration has been key for us. Like everything that we've made has been in collaboration with authorities, and we've had them in mind the entire time. We knew their pain points. We got stuck in there with them to find out what their problems were, and everything we've built has been off the back of that. And I think, yeah, it's just collaboration is key with all of this stuff.
We keep seeing all the headlines about the tsunami of job losses that are going to come into the economy. We're going to see all sorts of problems with a massive recession, bigger than anything anyone even my age has ever experienced. The first thing that can often get cut by businesses when they're hitting financial problems is their marketing budget. It seems like a simple way to save a few quid when you're struggling. But both Georgia and Krishna, what's your advice to companies that are perhaps worrying about where they can save a few quid here and there, and why they shouldn't, whatever they do, cut the marketing budget? In fact, it's surely now the time to actually spend a little bit more and invest a little bit more to get your message across.
I think that's such an interesting question, because even if there wasn't, you know, this big economic downfall, the first thing to cut in any organization at any point in time is always something that they can't see tangible results in, and that often is marketing. And they don't realize, and a lot of the time the decision makers don't understand the value that marketing have. And marketing is really, you know, significantly linked to creating a desire and a demand for your product in the first place. And so a lot of organizations, especially in the ITS industry, like in order to survive for tomorrow, they need to be changing their products and solutions in the first place. So if that's not paired with the right marketing to help tell the people giving the money, so in this case, authorities and government that are giving the stimulus money and the grants to agencies to help them get back onto their feet. And if we're not able to communicate with these authorities and say, hey, like this is what products and solutions should look like, this is what collaboration should look like, this is the kind of solutions you'll need to not just meet the demands of tomorrow, but to be able to be alive in the next 5 to 10, 20 years time from now. Marketing is at the heart and soul of delivering that message on point with a human aspect, like we've been talking about. We're not selling, you know, we're not about you need this product and it's great. It's going back to that human element, like this is why it's needed in the industry. And I think another interesting point is something that we talked about today. Who is responsible for getting that message out to the audience, like the main you know, customers traveling on the street and using the products? Because we're so engrossed at telling each other what we're working on and getting the government's money and getting the agency's money and, you know, making sure we're still surviving tomorrow. But all of the people that are elected into power are from, you know, the same pool of people that are uninformed about what's happening in transport in the first place. And they normally are then elected into, you know, transport decision-making authorities, be it in government, parliament, wherever. And if they don't understand what products and solutions are out there and what companies stand for, they won't be creating the right policies to, you know, or giving the right amounts of money for us to be able to be alive and kicking in the next few years. So I think that's really, it goes back full circle into why you need to educate everybody, because the person that might have power tomorrow needs to know about what you're doing. And it's kind of like twofold what you need to be doing. And usually in most organizations, you have like a 3 to 5 year sales cycle anyway, in like, especially something like Cubic does. You know, you're not going to do marketing today and sell tomorrow. You're marketing today to sell in 3 to 4 years time, because it's, you know, large projects that we're selling, integrations. So if you're not doing it this year, then, you know, you might survive next year, but where do you really have longevity in the future? And marketing is just important to continue telling that story and making sure your brand is on point, that people still trust and believe in you and your company and your products and solutions.
Yeah, I agree that it can definitely be challenging communicating to exec level the benefits of marketing. But I think marketing has also shifted quite a lot, where with all the B2B stuff and all the B2G stuff, it's all lead generated. So we're generating leads. We can prove to the business that what we're doing as a marketing team is benefiting them. We're feeding the sales guys and we're feeding our business development team leads, and they can see that we're not just putting out pretty pictures on Twitter and LinkedIn. The stuff that we're doing is actually bringing them business and bringing them conversations to start. And I think that's key in explaining to people why you shouldn't just go trim your marketing budget the minute that things get a bit tough.
And Alex, your job, as I said, is kind of to bridge the gap between the clever things that our industry is doing and the journalists that write about it. So you must see 1,000 stories a week and press releases. What tips would you give a marketing exec for the sorts of techniques and wording and way that they can just use in order to make you sit up, take notice and read beyond the subject line on the email?
Luckily, because I've been involved in this sector from both sides of the fence, I obviously have a journalist background, so I've been writing about this for years now. So for me, it's quite easy because I get excited about everything in this area. I think the most unique challenge about this sector now is that it's no longer within the sector as such. So for example, Appiway, let's take. Appiway isn't necessarily a transport solution and that's it. Like that, it's not going to go to a dedicated transport website like Auto Futures or something like that. It now is piquing the interest of areas, and again, I will pick something out the air like Wired or Forbes. These guys are now interested in what we have to offer them as an industry, and it sort of blurs the line. So I think the hardest thing for these companies is to push through and get the message across. So when I get press releases that are all very data heavy, and stuck into one minor sector or subsector of the industry, it limits them of spreading the news. And I actually know a few years ago, I launched let's call it a mobility channel or mobility website. And it was one of the only ones that was around that was dedicated to that. Now, of course, we're starting to see more prop up, like Auto Futures, for example. It's also interesting for them, for now, people to get involved with these new brands and these new publications. So much like the other way, looking at the industry and saying who's going to be the successful tech company in this way, whether it's simulation, whether it's smart cities and things like that, from the brand's perspective, they're now looking at who do I approach? Do I just throw this story out all over the place and hope that someone picks it up? Or do I monitor the market, see who is sort of the most interested and who has generated a hub for discussion? Because yes, you could go to Joe Blogs and his transport magazine or whatever, and you're going to go to 100,000 people. These 100,000 people might have no sort of interest in what your product is, but then you could go over to somebody else's, which has 1,000 people, which many people think, okay, that's not that much. But if it's 1,000 sort of industry leaders, if it's people, the decision makers, if it's A or top tier CEOs, product managers and things like that, then that's where you're going to start to see success. So if you're looking at approaching a sort of A-level executive in an industry, you have to tailor that to their needs. If you put out any old press release that's quite fluffy, which we see quite a lot, you're only going to pique the interest of a couple of brands and it might not go in the right way. So it's really about channeling that. And whenever I receive a press release or some sort, if it's planned out and literally tells me in the top line what it is, then I know what to do with that. Because obviously, in most cases, a press release isn't just going to get pushed out. You need to tell the person how, like myself, you need to tell me what you want to share, and don't put it all the way at the bottom or things like that, which I guess we all know on the simple level. But those would be the main things, really. I think it's very simple. Speaking of simple, I'd like to add as well that it still staggers me this happens today. I still don't receive a picture with every press release, and that goes a long, long way in sharing. I know many people who won't even put the press release out if they don't have a picture. And when it comes to tech companies that may not have many graphics and stuff, I've actually seen people throw it away and not use it.
One final question, Alex, for you, very, very quickly, because we've just started the partnership with DMA Media. Explain what the benefits are to ITS UK members of getting involved with you guys.
Yeah, very quickly. So DMA Media is, on the surface, we're Europe's largest independent news consultancy, but it goes on so much further than that. So we make brands, we help brands realize their sort of campaigns and stuff like that. Auto Futures actually started as a sort of a tester for us to see what we could provide other people. And luckily for me, that spiraled out of control and is where we are today. What we do is our main sort of slogan, unofficial slogan, is by journalists for journalists. But we've also generated that with brands. So someone comes to us and says, look, we need to do A, B, C. We come in and say, right, we can do that, but let's discuss how we can put a creative spin on this. We don't want your boring press release with one image or that's it. It turns up and then the next week it disappears. If it's great news and everybody wants to talk about it on the Monday, it doesn't necessarily mean it will be there on the Tuesday. So for us, we pride ourselves on building packages and campaigns and stuff that will generate conversation. And hopefully what I like to think we do is reflect what we do with Auto Futures, is create hubs for discussion. So it's no longer just about this bit of news is going out. It's more about how can we make the transport industry, in this case, a better place through collaboration, which we spoke about already, and the software and systems that we're introducing. So we hope that that's really the main factor of DMA Media, and many happy customers.
Okay, and I will just finish off with a word from both Krishna and Georgia. Krishna first, for our larger ITS UK members, what's your advice to them at the moment regarding the challenges that the industry is facing, and in fact, that, as we said, the whole economy is facing, that turns this crisis into an opportunity rather than a massive headache?
I think one of the key things is now is a time more than ever where public and private transportation needs to really hold hands and then collaborate themselves. I think for far too long we've operated in two different silos, and you have public transport where they are relying on us now more as well, because they're actually, you know, saying to their travelers, please, you know, don't use public transport unless you need to, and that's why people are driving more and using private vehicles. But then as slowly we come out of this, we're going to need to leverage public transport again, so we don't have too many people again on the roads, and congestion is managed equally throughout the whole transport network. So now is the time to come together, share resources, share knowledge, share technology, and let's tell a compelling story together so we can all move from the traveler to the agencies to the policymakers in one direction towards one common goal.
It's definitely a time where we just need to pick up the phone. We just need to pick up the phone to people and just see what's going on, you know, particularly with local authority partners. What are their challenges and what do we have? It might not necessarily be what we have. It could be our industry friends. You know, we're all in ITS together. We may know someone else that we can put that authority in touch with, or that business or whoever in touch with, and we can just all help each other out.
Wise words from our panel today, as always, on these ITS UK coronavirus webinars. And of course, as communications manager for ITS UK, one of my jobs is to share the news of our industry with each other and further afield. So do remember to add ITS UK to your mailing list, and we will share your stories, your news with the wider industry as well. And remember as well, our partnership with DMA Media, there's more detail on that on our website as well. So Georgia, Krishna and Alex, thank you ever so much for your time on this latest ITS UK coronavirus webinar. Keep working hard, keep pushing ITS forward, everyone, because we have a real opportunity at the moment to solve a lot of the challenges that our economy and our society faces at the moment. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be along again with another one of these in a week's time. And as I say, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for some great content as well. Thanks for watching.